Hello friends, this is David Vose. Today is July the 17th, 2016. It's great to see everybody today. Friends, I want to talk to you about the moon. I did another video a couple weeks ago, but I want to do another one today because there's a lot of stuff about this moon that we need to talk about. There are some absolute facts about the moon that if you know those facts, it's going to help to put a lot of this together. You see that spot right there? Now let's start with just that one spot there on the moon. There is a whole lot of stuff that we're going to go through, but let's start with this spot because all the information that I'm going to give you here is going to be factual. You can look up all this information on your own. Now, to start with, all of you probably are very aware of the fact that NASA or our scientists today, they happen to believe that there are craters all over the moon. You say, well, of course there is, Dave. You can see the craters. In fact, you can see those craters in this very picture that you're looking at. Notice that right there in the center there appears to be one huge crater. But there's something about that crater that you probably don't know, and it's very interesting because nobody ever tells you. I don't think you'll go to 1,000 videos about the moon and ever hear this very important fact. The center of that big round spot, and does seem to be about 1, 2, 3 rings around that spot. At least 3, maybe 4, depending on how you count those rings. But the very center of that spot seems to be a flat, smooth area. What you do not know is that thing is like 500 miles across, and that it is 10,000 feet below sea level in the center. Now, why is that important, friends? Because the claim that all of these circular patterns are meteorite craters becomes absolutely ridiculous, seen through the facts and the geological reality. On Earth, there are virtually no craters, and though those craters that you see on Earth are actually not craters. Now, I know there's going to be people watch this video, scientists and geologists and everything, and say, Dave, what are you talking about? You aren't even qualified to be talking about this. You don't know what you're talking about. But hear me out. All of you people out there with just a 3rd grade level of education can understand this. I'm going to put some things together for all of you, and even you geologists who claim, I know all of you geologists on Earth, in your little, studies, you've decided that the glaciers carved out all the mountains, and that we've got these craters like the one in Arizona. Well, now, if you go to Google Earth, friends, and put in a crater, you will not find very many craters. Oh, there's quite a few craters in Nevada, but they were all man-made, made by nuclear explosions. They're a little bit north of Las Vegas. You'll find a crater lake, which, if you look at it very carefully, is on the top of a mountain. It's not a crater, it's a volcano. And if you look at a couple of like the top 5 or 7 craters that are supposed to have made impact on the Earth, you'll see that they're in all of them almost insignificant. It's difficult to even find them or the outline of those craters. One of them they claim is in the Gulf of Mexico, and really all that you have there is an ocean and no sign of a crater at all. There is a few areas on this Earth that appear to be crater-like, but it is very misleading. Every one of those are simply volcanoes. Now, any of you who have ever gone to Mount St. Helens or any other crater, what happens when a volcano, any other volcano hole, what happens is that the volcano explodes and erupts and blows a hole, a perfectly round hole, right out of the mountain. And out from that core, it's a round, perfectly round core, comes lava. And then in the center of this crater, which in almost every case when a volcano blows, it blows the top of the mountain off and makes this big crater. And in the center of that crater develops a little core, a little mountain. Sometimes the lava comes up and makes a very odd shape, and it kind of falls off to one side or another. But for the most part, you end up with this large crater-looking thing with a little core piece in the middle, which is what all of the supposed craters on Earth look like. Go to Google Maps or go to the Google Images and look at, type the word crater and look on Earth. Look at the ones that they show you in pictures. You'll see some of them that appear to be always at the top of a mountain or in a high plateau. Many of them have an island right in the middle of this area, and there's usually water in these craters because on Earth it rains and the water comes down and gets caught in these little cauldrons. And over time, some of these little cauldrons will wash one side of the crater out and the water will run out. And that's where you have these little cup-like, saucer-like indentions at the top of most of the mountains in the Rocky Mountains and throughout the world. There are a lot of little crater lakes at the top of these little peaks. Many more little crater-like lakes than you can imagine. Because you see, I lived in Idaho, and I remember, climbing and going throughout the Forest Service and climbing these mountains. They had trails to most of them, and almost every peak in the Cascades and also in the Sierras and in every mountain range you can name, there's always at the top of each mountain a little hole, a little crater-like indentation, and there's usually a small crater lake or a glacier lake there. Because it's high altitude and gets cold, many of these little water holes freeze and they become glaciers. But the little lake did not get formed by the glacier as they're trying to tell you. The little lake there was formed by the hole that's left from the volcano blowing. And that's what every one of these craters on Earth really are, is volcanic holes. And you say, well, David, that's just ridiculous. I mean, of course, over the period of millions of years, we've been hit by meteorites and so forth. Well, friends, look, I've been here for some period of time on my own, and I've never seen a big rock hit the earth and leave a big crater. You say, oh, well, Dave, this is millions of years. Okay, well, my father never seen one. His father never seen one. And his father. In fact, I don't read of one in the Dark Ages, in the books and the annals of history. I've never seen any historian speak of one. The sacred books don't even speak of it. I mean, even the Sumerian tablets, which goes back thousands of years, they never talk about a big rock hitting the earth and destroying everybody. We have Sodom and Gomorrah, which was, perhaps sulfur and fire coming out of the heavens, but it didn't say anything about a big rock that just destroyed everything and left a big crater. We have the flood, the story of the flood, but it's a bunch of water. It's a little uncertain. We could debate what that might have been. But we don't have any record in thousands of years of history of mankind of a huge rock hitting the earth. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's because we have the atmosphere, and most of the rocks just burn up in the atmosphere and they never make it to the surface. But on the moon, there is no atmosphere and they hit the surface. Well, here's the thing. All of these holes that are on the moon, now, go get Google Earth and then go up to the little thing which shows the moon. You can have, you at the top of your screen, you can switch it to Google Mars or Google Moon. And go to the Google Moon and look at all these supposed craters that were caused by supposedly meteorites, and you'll notice that you cannot even find one of these craters that is overlapping on top of another crater. And supposedly there are thousands and thousands of these craters all over the moon, and each one of them is in a separate location from the other. And notice that each of the craters have a mountain-like protrusion right in the middle, which is exactly what you have in the crater of a volcano when the core of lava begins to ascend and make that little spot in the middle. If you notice, almost all of the craters on the moon have that. And none of these craters on the moon overlap another crater. Each one of them is perfectly separated by some small distance from the other crater. And you see, if these craters were caused by meteorites pelting the moon over thousands and millions of years, then every time in some chance happening when these meteorites would crash into the moon, it would land wherever it happened to land, and many of these craters would have to overlap one another. Some of the craters would hit in the same exact spot. You would not have spheres, perfect spheres, and then some distance in another perfect sphere, and some distance in another perfect sphere. But you would have spheres that just everywhere, and they wouldn't always be round. See, since we don't have any actual proof of any meteorite causing a crater, we cannot actually judge to see, well, what would a meteorite do? What would, it's possible that somewhere on the Earth a rock has hit the Earth and it's made a little indention, and a possible little crater-like indention. But a large one, to see what that would actually do, we're only speculating. But to imagine that every time a meteorite came blasting into the moon or into the Earth, that it would come exactly straight down. Perhaps on the Earth it would because of gravity, but I don't think that's even possible even on the Earth, because if any of you have seen a meteorite, they come at an angle. Now, just normal physics tells you that when something strikes a flat surface at an angle, it wouldn't leave a perfectly round hole, and it wouldn't have a little bitty mountain or tower in the middle. You see, what leaves a round hole, a perfectly round crater, is a volcano, and they almost always develop a little lava core in the center. This is what they do. And if you notice, every one of these little circles on the moon that you see, those little craters, are perfectly round, or many of them are. And if they're not perfectly round, they're very closely, approaching round. And almost all of them have something in the middle. But there's something else that you must know. Most all of these craters are very, very deep. All you have to do to find this out for yourself is go to the Google Moon, put your cursor or your little mouse over one of these holes, especially right there in the center, and you'll look at the depth. And you'll see that it's sometimes minus 10,000 feet below. 10,000 feet deep, friends. Now, friends, if a meteor hit the moon, it would not knock a hole 10,000 feet deep, almost straight down. Friends, what would actually happen, perhaps, is it would make a big oblong, screeching path, or possibly it might make a crater, but it would be a little oblong, maybe egg-shaped, perhaps, I don't know. Maybe deeper at one end than the other, but not exactly with this exact hole in perfect dimension of a circle with a little lava core in the middle. And it wouldn't burrow a hole 10,000 feet deep. And it sounds amazing, because remember now, the moon's only about 1/3 the size of the Earth, which is still very large. Very large. I mean, the Earth is perhaps about 8,000 feet in diameter, whereas the moon is a little over 2,000 feet. So it's large. And some of these craters that you're looking at are perhaps, some of them are like 500 miles across. This one that we were just looking at is about 500 miles across, friends. And you see those large indentions right there on the screen, those large black spots. Those are the same large black spots that you see from the Earth. Those are 10,000 feet deep, and it's 500 to 1,000, 1,500 miles, in some cases about 1,500 miles across that large area there that is about 10,000 feet below sea level. Now, that is exactly what we see on the Earth. We have one side of the Earth that has most of the mass of land. The other side that has most of the ocean. I don't know if most of you don't realize it. You kind of think, oh, well, all the continents are, spread around the globe. No, look at the Earth, and you'll see that Asia, Brazil, North America, Russia, all that, we're all kind of floating in the water, more or less on one side of the planet, and the other side of the Earth is just water. Well, this is very similar to the moon, because on one side of the moon, you'll notice that there is all of this is the back side of the moon. There's just all of these craters, and it's all white. But on the side of the moon that we see from Earth, it is dark. It's a dark color. And there's very few craters seen or visible. And it is actually about 10,000 feet below sea level. Whereas on the other side of the moon, on the back side of the moon, it's like 20,000 feet above sea level. Now, of course, I'm calling it sea level. NASA is saying that there is no sea on the moon. Since we have never gone there, you and I don't know. I would suspect that if there had been any sea there, it's dried up or something for the most part, because we do see some lines and perhaps even some crater-looking marks, although that doesn't prove anything, because if you look at Google Earth and you look at the ocean area, you see a lot of stretchy marks and lines and, and bumps and mountains and stuff. It's like you just don't even see the water, right? You're just looking at all these lines and so forth. So I don't know how they're doing this. I don't know how you're looking at a satellite picture at the Earth and not seeing any of the water. You're just seeing all the indentations and cracks and stretch marks that are at the bottom of the ocean. And so I don't know how they're taking pictures from satellites of the moon and how we're getting all this put together. I'm not familiar with how they put and piece all of this together. Obviously, there's large portions of the moon where satellite images are very poor. They seem to either be purposely making it vague or they're hiding something. I don't know. But what I'm trying to tell you is there is a reason that we always see one side of the moon. It is a very simple reason that I've never heard any scientist tell you. And I'm going to tell you here today some very interesting facts, one of which why the moon always faces towards us in that specific way. The part of the moon that faces the Earth is that dark, dark part that is 10,000 feet below sea level. The other side of the moon that faces the other way, on the other side of the Earth, away from the Earth, has 20,000 feet above sea level. That means there's a lot more land mass on the other side of the moon, and therefore it's heavier. Now, if you go into the kitchen and get yourself a spoon, and you pick up the spoon by the handle and hold it loosely and kind of loose enough to where it will just kind of, rock back and forth like a pendulum, you'll notice that the spoon will always come to rest in an exact downward motion because the other end of the spoon is heavier. The spoon part has more metal than the handle. And so it tends to fall the heaviest part away from you. And this is what's happening. The moon is caught in our gravity. And the heaviest part is being swung away behind, it's being carried along by the velocity of the Earth. And so the moon is just, bouncing around behind us, following us, really, in a spiral motion. Well, the back side of the moon is heavier, so it always swings outward and away from the Earth. And the lighter part of the moon, which is 10,000 feet below sea level, always faces the Earth because it's lighter. And so it's like the handle of that spoon, and the heavier part is on the other end, and it's being the centrifugal force of the motion of Earth traveling and the moon following it keeps the heavier part of the moon farthest away from the Earth. This is why we only see that one dark side of the moon, which is a dark color. If you look up at night, you'll notice it looks like continents or something, what in reality would be the area which would be sea, because it's the lowest place on the moon. And the lighter colors are getting the light. And so for one of the reasons why the higher parts of the moon is brighter and lighter is because, it catches the light. But since that dark area on the side of the moon that faces the Earth is so large and wide and broad, it is very strange that it is such a dark color, because you see the sun it's very easy for the sun to reach that area. In fact, it's actually facing the sun, or else we wouldn't be seeing it. Like on a full moon, you see it very clearly, and the sun is shining right there. And yet still, it is a very dark color. That must mean then, friends, that low 10,000 feet below sea level area is either water, and they're lying to us, or it is an area that was stained by some chemicals or minerals or water. Now, the official thing that scientists are saying is that dark area is lava, that it's colored by the dark lava. Well, when they say that, they really tip their hand. We realize that they actually do know that the moon is very, very volcanic. It has a lot of magma, and they're admitting that there is volcanic magma coming up out of the moon and coloring parts of the moon. The only problem is that if the moon is going to explode and magma is going to come out, it wouldn't be doing it on the side of the moon necessarily that is the low part. Although it might, in some instances, be spewing out some sort of steam or hot chemicals, or even, I guess in a sense, a coating of oil-like magma, and making it dark, simply because the Earth's or the moon's crust in that area is thinner, and perhaps that's why there's a lot more dark area, because it's being stained by, I don't know if you've ever gone to Yellowstone and noticed that there's a lot of beautiful colors where these holes are, and the geysers come shooting up out of these holes, and there's steam coming out of there, and there's mineralization going on, and a darkening of the soil, and so there's all kinds of things that could be causing this dark color on this side of the moon facing the Earth. For one thing, I think that it is just a very flat area that's, to me, showing signs that it used to be underwater if it isn't now. And it's caused sand to settle in there, and it's really flat, and there's very few marks and stretch marks there because the sand has settled in there. And the fact that there's not as much, there's not 20,000, perhaps 30, 40,000 feet of soil that's not there because it's 10,000 below sea level, that would then be a really good reason why there would be steam coming through the cracks there, discoloring, you might call it magma. So they may be right about that. But they're saying that there's no volcanoes on the other side of the moon, and that's impossible. That's insane, because if the moon is definitely got magma inside, and every mass does, if there's a large enough mass, the very fact that it has mass and gravity, and we know that the moon has gravity, unless NASA's lying to us. They showed pictures of people landing on the moon, which I don't believe they did back in the 1960s. But assuming that they did, because they say they did, they showed that the people that were there, the astronauts, were bouncing up and down. They said, well, there's not as much gravity, but they do have some gravity. All right, well, that gravity means that there is mass. Enough mass on the moon that it's got gravity. And so gravity pulls in towards the center of a globe, of a sphere. That's why we have gravity on the Earth. We have more gravity. The Earth is bigger and has more mass. But the moon has enough mass to cause this pull, this compressing effect. When the soil is compressed into a small sphere like the moon, it causes the center to heat up. And that makes a hot core, the same way it does on the Earth. And so therefore there would be a hot magma underneath the crust of the moon, just as there would be on the Earth. And I think that scientists are readily capable of admitting that there is magma. I've heard them talk about the magma and the volcanic activity on the moon when talking about this dark color at that dark area on this side of the moon. So if they're understanding that the magma is coming up and making that dark color, which I'm not sure that that's true, friends. I'm saying that dark color may be the result of that being the bottom of an ocean, either at one time or perhaps there's still water there. We don't know. But I believe that there are some real parallels between the moon and the earth. As I said before, the earth has most of the land on one side of the earth and the other side is mostly water, and that means it's below sea level. The actual crust of the earth on one side of the earth is 10,000 or more feet below sea level, 15,000 feet in some cases or more. On the moon, it's just about what you would think, about 8 to 10,000 feet below sea level on that side of the moon, just like it would be on the earth. Now, just as the earth, which you can find mountains like 30,000 feet and plateaus that are 10 and 15,000 feet, just the same you find on the moon. Basically, the whole backside of the moon that's facing away from the earth is this huge plateau. It's like 10 or 15,000 feet in some areas, and the mountains are like 20,000 or more feet. That's just exactly what we would expect. Since the earth is bigger and we have mountains as high as 30,000 feet or more, and the ocean is as deep as 10, 15,000 feet or more. So the moon, being, a large planet-like sphere, like little more than a third as big as the earth, should therefore probably have an area that facing the earth would be lower. That would be our ocean area. And away from the earth would be higher in elevation, and that would be our mountainous plateau area, or the steppes of the oriental area of Mongolia and stuff like that, and Saudi Arabia and all the mountain ranges in there. It's very, very similar. And indeed, just as the moon has all these craters pelting the thing, everywhere you see land, because the land is the result of magma coming up out of the ground and making mountains, and every mountaintop has a hole, so it is on the moon. Every one of these holes you see on the moon are craters left by volcanic activity. And in every one of these volcanic holes, you'll see a little core that is pushed up. A little, and notice that there's a flat area in each one of them, where the water had once been when there was water on the moon, if there isn't now. And that flat area is usually darker because there's minerals in water, and it leaves behind a dark color. So, it's no mystery then what the craters are on the moon. It is volcanic activity. The moon has magma under the surface. It's no mystery why it faces the earth always in the exact same position, because just like gravity that pulls you in the same spot down towards the earth every time, so gravity is pulling the heaviest part of the moon, the backside, away from the earth, and it will do it every time and in every case. And therefore the moon can never slip around or rotate because of centrifugal force. We're going fast through space, the moon is following us, and the heaviest part of the moon is going to trail behind, and the lightest part is going to be in front towards the earth, and that's just going to be that way. Now, what we're saying then is that we don't have any proof for any meteors hitting the moon. We've never seen one. We've never seen any kind of large meteor being formed in our lifetimes on the moon, nor have we ever seen anything happen like that on the earth. Now, I'm not saying that you don't see meteors hit the earth, that you don't see asteroids and stuff at times, balls of fire come out of the sky and land somewhere and make a little dent in the earth, of course. But this particular thing we're looking at, these perfectly round spherical indentions that are thousands of feet deep, many of them 10,000 feet deep. And if you'll notice on your screen, you see that in each one of these craters there is another hole in the center. And now You see that big crater down there at the bottom of your screen? Right in the center, you see what looks like a little mountain. Okay, and that's what you would see in the bottom of one of these craters, this little mountain-like edifice. Now, just like on Earth, in a crater, you're going to either find one of two things. Either there's going to be a deep hole where the magma did not come out of the hole, and so it leaves a large shaft going down deep into the earth, perhaps as far as 20,000 feet, where the magma did not rise up and make a little mountain in the middle of the crater, as it did here in the one that you see before you. Now, notice this crater on Earth, and you see that, and here's another one, these craters always have a little mountain in the middle of a round, perfectly round circle. And usually there's water in the crater. Of course, they're saying there's no water on the moon, and why would they be telling us that the craters on Earth that we do have, that we can visibly see, that are really caused by volcanic activity, and that have the same shape as the ones on the moon, and have the little core and little mountain in the middle, why would they be trying to tell us that they're anything different? And why would they be any different? There's thousands of them on the moon, there's thousands of them on the Earth, and the ones on the Earth are all the same thing, volcanic craters. But you see, it's obvious what they're trying to do. They want you to believe that there's nothing on the moon. Don't even think about going there. There's nothing there. Don't pay attention to the moon. It's just a big desert. There's no water. There's, you wouldn't want to go there. It's uninhabitable because, after all, there's these big rocks coming down out of the sky, making these big, old, huge craters, and this is all dried up. There's no trees. There's no water. There's nothing there. There's nothing to look at, friends. Go home. Okay, only the earth. You see, we've been taught by our religions for thousands of years to not pay attention to the sky. Don't pay attention, you see, because you guys are all by yourself. And an invisible, boogeyman in the sky made you, right, by fiat. And just 6,000 years, here you are. Oh, but see, now we're learning that the earth's been here for billions of years. And we're beginning to learn a lot of little things that it's not matching up with some of the stuff that we were taught growing up, friends. And here's another one of these things. This is what the face of the moon looks like, friends. Take a good look at that. Those are craters. And that is, the water is how the earth gets that coloration and the mineralization. If you go to Yellowstone, you'll see all that mineralization. Now there before your eyes, you see how a crater is formed. It's a very beautiful process, friends. The same way that they're formed every time. And right up in the middle, you see at times there is the lava that makes its way to the surface, comes up through the core of the earth, and begins to make this little mountain in the middle of the crater. See, we have these craters like they have on the moon all over this earth. There's many of them. Anyone who's ever climbed the Cascades or the Sierras knows that at the top of every mountain and every cliff there's a little hole, and there's usually a little lake up there. And some of you who like to hike have probably even gone up there and looked around. And this is what we have on the earth, and this is what our beautiful earth looks like. We're able to come and see these beautiful pictures. We know that this is a beautiful place, and that all of these craters were created by nature so that we would have ponds and lakes and a little habitat for perhaps some fish and some birds and some wildlife. This is the geological evolution of the earth, and friends, it's the same that you find on the moon. And it's a beautiful thing. Now, no one knows what the moon looks like because we haven't gone there. But I guarantee that if there was big rocks hitting the moon, we'd be seeing it all the time. And when they hit, if they made explosions like that, now remember that one hole that we talked about at the beginning of this, there it is right there, friends. Now imagine that crater Well, first of all, you notice there's 3 rings around it. We started to talk about that at the beginning. That's not a crater because it got hit from a meteorite. All right, if a rock hit that thing right there, remember that's like 500 or maybe 800 miles across. The outer rim of that thing is 20,000 feet above sea level, and the inner part of that is below something about 10,000 feet below sea level. So if something smacked into the moon and carved out a 40,000 foot hole, which is what it would be from the 20,000 above down to the 10,000 below in the center, that would be actually about 30,000 foot hole. That would literally cause such an explosion that it would crack the moon right in half, or perhaps knock the moon out of the atmosphere, or out of the orbit, I should say, of the Earth. It would probably be impossible, because for anything to make a dent that big, 500 miles across, 30,000 feet deep, it would literally have to be enough force to knock it out of the gravitational pull of the Earth, friends. It would not be a small thing. It would cause havoc all around the moon and the Earth. Such geological upheavals are only the stuff that myths are made of, friends. Our Earth and our moon and our universe is much more peaceful and joyful and wonderful than all of the fear tactics and all of the insanity that we've been taught from the time that we're little children about how the world's going to come to an end. I see people every day, friends, writing to me and asking me, "Oh, David, what are we going to do? We're all going to die because Nibiru is going to come crashing into the Earth and we're all going to die. Oh, what's going to happen when the next comet hits the Earth and destroys us? Because after all, Dave, this happens every so many thousand years and then we're due for one." Friends, our Father in heaven loves us. He's provided us with a wonderful home. And nothing's going to happen to this because the Bible says the earth abideth forever. And He loves us all. He's not going to let Satan win. I'm sorry if this disappoints some of you, but Satan's not going to win. And evil, bestial, kind of serpentine demons are not going to come sliding down out of the sky tomorrow and swallow us all up. Friends, we've been here for thousands upon thousands and perhaps millions upon millions and even perhaps billions of years, and we're not going anywhere anytime soon. And the earth is sitting upon its established place, and the Bible says it shall not be moved. And by the way, that picture right there is a really good picture of that spot that we were talking about in the other video that looked like it could have been something man-made. Take a look at that. It turns out that it perhaps is not man-made, but it's a pretty high mountain there. There's a couple of volcanic activities going on the right end of it, but the left part of that square, around the square end of the left side of that square, that is a river. Very clearly a river, friends. And, you know, I don't know of any other substance on the earth that can cause a river. There's only 2 things that could be making a river like that, or a river bottom. We don't know if there's a river there because they blurred the whole picture out. But it's either water or some other kind of fluid. Perhaps there's a green tea floating around up there. On Earth, there's only water that flows in streams like that down mountains. So I would say that there's either water in that particular river, or there was at one time. The only other thing it could be, the only other thing that flows upon this earth is magma. And it's pretty obvious it's not a magma flow, because you see there on the right side, or there in the middle, there's 2 very deep craters, which are volcanic craters. And if they had been spewing volcanic lava, it wouldn't be where that river appears to be. Notice that aside from that large river on the left side of your screen, there's a smaller river or creek that's in the center of that square or that mountain there. And that's a jig-jaggy little line that only water could make. So that is a little creek there. Now, if you'll also notice right there in your screen, you see on the very far left upper corner, there is you notice how flat, that's that low area there. That's the dark side of the moon that we see from the Earth. Now, on the left upper corner, you see there's a ridge. And that ridge is a very, very high mountain range. You can go to Google Moon, put your mouse on that ridge, and you'll see that it's over 20,000 feet. It's a very large mountain range. Now, there are other lines exactly like that run for thousands of miles. And this is a close-up of one of those ridges. You can see it's a mountain range. We have lots of them on the Earth. And there's only one way that those mountain ranges can form, and it's through tectonic plates moving. And on Earth, as on the Moon, there are many, many volcanic mountains in the long range or ridge of mountains that go around the Earth. Now, if you'll notice, there is one place, as you see here in this picture, that goes all the way around our Earth. It's like a ridge. It's a tectonic plates. It's where they meet. And that is where all the mountains occur. Follow that line. It goes down through Alaska and all the way down through California, through Washington, Oregon, California, and down through Mexico, and on down through Peru and Chile, and all the way down to the Antarctic region. Now you see there is where, if you, on the top right, you see Alaska, and it goes down through the Aleutian Islands off of Alaska. We already talked about how it goes down around through America, but it goes down around, see, through, goes to Japan, see, and down around through the islands off of Korea and down through that area, and all the way down around through New Guinea and New Zealand, down by Australia and back to Australia again. That's where all the mountain ranges go. And you also notice again that most of the mountains and the continents are on one side of the Earth, but on that side of the Earth that you're seeing, it's almost all ocean, and 10 to 15, 20,000 feet below the sea level, just like it is on the Moon. Now there you see a picture of one of these areas where you see these lines that are coming from a crater. Now, if that crater was caused by a meteorite, why would there be lines or mountain ridges going in a straight direction down off that area? You see, that crater is not actually a low point. It's actually a high point. That's a mountain. Right around that crater, you see where the white area is? It's getting the sunlight. That's a high plateau. That's a mountain, probably 15 to 20,000 feet. And the little ridges coming down off that mountain is a mountain ridge. You see, it certainly would be a straight line from the center of the crater straight away from that crater, because the crater's at the top of the mountain, and some few miles around that crater there is this huge mountain that goes down, and if you notice to the left, it's going towards those dark areas. That's that dark area that's closest to the Earth that we always see, and that's 10,000 or more feet below sea level. So that mountain ridge is heading down towards that area. And if you put your little mouse on Google Moon, you'll see that it goes lower and lower and lower and lower. So what we know is that the white area around that crater at the bottom right hand of your screen is a high plateau. What we know for a fact is that the darker areas to the left of the screen is a very low elevation, much like that low elevation on our Earth we call the oceans. And we see that high ridge going from the center of the crater down into that low area. Now, you also see a lot of like little lines going in all directions, because you see the height of this, the plateau, the elevation is there right around that crater, and then as it goes outward from the crater, it gets lower elevation, and therefore the water is going to go down the hill, and it's going to follow a straight line, and it's going to cause a canyon to form, or a ravine, and it's going to wash the dirt away in front of it as it goes, as gravity is funneling the water downhill into that deep basin and other lower areas around that peak or that plateau. It would follow a pretty good straight line down. This would form mountain ridges that would stay elevated because the water is washing out a ravine. And as you know, whenever you have ever seen a ravine or a canyon, the canyon is the low point, and on both sides of the canyon there is a ridge. And this is the ridge that you see going from that crater, which is at the top of the mountain, because the mountain is formed by the lava, and that makes a high point, and then the water, when it rains, gets caught in that crater and forms a lake. And when the water runs down the mountain, it makes these ravines, and this makes these long ridges going outward away from these craters that you see. This is the only explanation, friends, for all of these craters that you see all over the moon, because it's the only explanation, because we have seen with our own eyes how this works on Earth. And we know that, we know exactly how craters are formed on Earth. We know how magma comes up out of the ground and creates mountains and busts the plates up, so that at these where these two plates meet, it causes friction, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get an earthquake, and it pops one of these plates up on top of the other plate, and that ridge where the plate pops up becomes a mountain. And when it pops up, it causes little holes to be there, cracks in the earth, and the steam comes up out of the center of the core of the earth and causes magma flow, and when that magma pops out of the earth, it causes a big explosion, which makes these craters. And this is what we see all over the earth, and this is exactly what we see on the moon. So, friends, that is really what I wanted to tell you guys today, is that we are being deceived, and there is a plot that's thicker than grandma's oatmeal, and guarantee that it's there for a reason. They're trying to deceive us for a reason. They don't want you to look out into space. I hear a lot of people telling me in the message box below, "Oh, Dave, don't be fooled. This is demonic activity. There aren't no aliens. There aren't no other people on other planets. It's all subterfuge. You've been deceived. It's all demonic, disembodied spirits, and it's all the devil." But here's what you fail to misunderstand. You see, the ancient records tell of real beings from other planets that came to this earth. That is the records. It's in the Bible, the book of Enoch. Even in the Bible, in Genesis 6:4, the Nephilim came to the earth. This is the actual truth. It's the lie that they are disembodied spirits. That's what they've been trying to deceive you on. See, religion has been trying for a long time. The Catholic Church said, "Oh, just do this, hokey pokey, voila, now you're saved." That's the lie, friends. And just, do this little ritual and all the demons will flee. And that's the lie, friends. These demons don't exist. There are no, hokey pokey ghosts flying around. That's not what this is really all about. That's where the deception came in. They've been deceiving you for thousands of years. They don't want you to know that we live in a much bigger universe, that you are a child of a living divine being, that you have such potential that you could rule a planet, that you could fly to the uttermost bounds of the universe if you would only believe in yourself and stop believing the lie of Satan, who says you're a sinner, who says you're evil and you don't deserve to live, that you were born a worthless sinner, and he's made you believe this. Jesus came to set us free, to tell us that we're not sinners, to tell us that we've got an inner spiritual man that needs to be born within us. We need to wake up. He said all you got to do is have faith. Oh, ye of little faith. Just say unto that mountain, be ye uprooted and planted into the sea, and it will obey you. He says, oh, my disciples, ye of little faith. You see, you're not my servants. A servant does not know what his master does, but I've told you all things that I do. He says, I would like to tell you much more, but you can't bear it right now because you're not willing to open your eyes. Friends, we've got to open our eyes. There's a vast universe out there waiting for us, but we've got to learn to wake up and stop being fooled by all this hokey-pokey stuff. See, religion's going to keep on trying to fool you and tell you that there's nothing out there. And the moon's just a lifeless, dead planet where these big rocks are smashing into it. And there's no way we could even be there. There's no water. There's nothing there. It's all lifeless and dead. And all the planets are lifeless and dead. And the only thing that's alive is this mortal existence in this little prison house. You see, you're in prison. This is hell, friends. And until you wake up and learn to fly, you will continue to come back over and over and over again into this lifeless death planet where they've got us all imprisoned because they've made us believe that there's nothing out there and we just need to be quiet and obey our priest or obey our policemen. And because, you see, after all, forget the Constitution, the police have authority to just go along and beat you up at any time. Friends, everything they're telling us is a lie. We are free children of our Father in heaven. We can control ourselves. We have love. We love each other. We don't hate each other. There's nobody shooting each other on the streets. This is all being bought and paid for by George Soros. The elite are paying for agitators to go into our streets and cause martial law on this earth. And they've been paying these priests for a long time to stand there and do this hokey-pokey and make us believe that there's nothing out there but lifeless dead space. Because, you see, we've never been to the moon, so we don't know what the moon is like. But, you see, they say they went there. And they showed us a couple of pictures where some guy in a spacesuit, said, hey, I'm one small step for mankind. So, obviously, they must have went there then because they said they did. See, obviously, everything that the government says they really did do, because they don't lie, of course. They couldn't have lied about 9/11. That must have been a terrorist attack. What a coincidence, because we wanted to go into Afghanistan and Iraq and make that all our own and take all the oil. We know they never lie to us when they murder our people in the streets. Why, obviously they had to do it because, well, in order to keep peace and security in the world, they've got to shoot some people sometimes, right? Wrong, friends. They're lying to you. And they're starting martial law by all of these riots that they're fomenting. ISIS is a big lie, friends. And all of the things that's been going on, World War II and World War I and Vietnam, we had to go over there, right? We had to bomb Japan. We had to finance Hitler and then bring him down. We had to go over and destroy Iraq, because after all, we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. But no, even though he didn't actually have weapons of mass destruction, you see, it proved in the end that we did the right thing after all. See, we did the right thing, and we're never going to apologize for anything like that because, you see, now look how nice it is over there. And after all, that gave us the opportunity to create ISIS and frighten the world out of its gourd, right? And get us all so scared that we're going to, be begging for police to be on our streets and tanks to be in our cities and please lock us all up that we don't hurt each other. Well, friends, I could go on and on and on with all the lies that they've told us, and the moon landing is just another lie, friends, because you see that the Allen belt, the Van Allen belt, protects us from radiation, and once you get in a ship and you go out into outer space, you're not being protected by the Earth's atmosphere. And friends, everybody knows, it's very clear now to anyone who's done any research on the photographs that they've given us, that those were all made up and somewhere in Hollywood, perhaps out in the desert in Arizona or Nevada or something. This wasn't real. And so, friends, why did they fake that? Well, there's lots of reasons, but one of the things they wanted you to believe is that everything in the universe is dead space. You see, there's no aliens, there's no people from other planets, there's only us, and we better just get used to it because we're their slaves. So, friends, that's all I've got to say. I hope you guys have a great week. This here is David Vos, and I will sign out now. Please have a great week, friends. We'll see you again tomorrow.